Welcome everyone, South King Fire Board of Fire Commissioners. This is our special meeting November 13th, Station 68. Call to order, please. Pledge allegiance, Director Lee. Thank you. Down to item number 3, Commissioners' comments. Any comments from the Commissioners? Commissioner Fuller. Hold on. You're going to need a mic.
Thank you. I think we should recognize our chief for achieving from the commission on professional credentialing that he has completed, and as the designation of Chief Fire Officer conferred on him on November 5th for demonstrating high level of competence as witnessed by his peers by documenting professional, educational, technical, and community service achievements and fulfilling prescribed standards of performance, ethics, conduct required for a CFO, Chief Fire Officer.
Thank you, Chief. Need any other comments? Just let everyone know Commissioner Burris is late. He'll be in. We're down to item number 4, District Finances, Path to Financial Solvency.
There we go. Good afternoon. Director Ganem is here to make a presentation on the budget, the FBC, and financial and our finances kind of in quick succession. I just want to compliment all of the staff that worked so hard on the next couple presentations and everybody that participated in the process. That was very enlightening. You'll see in the next couple of presentations that our department's in good shape. We have a balanced budget. We maintained our commitment to the community with the FBC and reducing the tax burden or the financial burden to most of our taxpayers. And you'll see an emphasis on adding capacity for operations and an emphasis on wellness within the department. So with that, I'll turn it over to Director Ganem for the next couple of items.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for joining us today. It's good to see everybody. Apparently, I don't draw quite the crowd that others do, but that's okay. We've got a lot of people online. We've got a lot of exciting things to talk about. We also have a former commissioner in the audience today, Commissioner Mark Freitas, retired commissioner. So thanks for joining us today, Mark. Couple of things here. We've done this the last few budget cycles. We kind of give a snapshot of our financial position. And this is a big one this year because this is our 75th year anniversary, and we've accomplished a lot, and we should be proud of what we've done together. So we're going to talk about the last 5 years and kind of taking a look back and where we came from and where we're going. Did you say something? Everybody knows that I appreciate quotes, so I thought I'd share with you. You cannot understand what is happening today without understanding what came before. Steve Jobs. And that's what we're going to do, is we're going to take a look back quickly, and we're going to see where we came from so that we know where we're going. How did we get here? So reality revealed. Over the last several years, we've done analysis. We did a 10-year cash flow. We've looked at everything that this district has done for a number of years and looked at our challenges and how did the decisions of the past shape where we are today. So one of the things that we discussed, one of the things that we presented in some of those sessions were that operational staffing was insufficient to make good on promises. Even though we were told that we had enough people to staff additional units, when we actually looked at the budget, it didn't work. We used overtime to make that happen, but that was an unsustainable endeavor because it was drawing from our general funds. And so that is one thing that we shared with the board and sought to resolve. Budgeted frontline positions were less than required to staff those units. Prior to 2020, we had 130 firefighters or less assigned to operations, which accounted to about 32.5 per shift. Also, the last 5 years, sick leave utilization, leave in general, is higher than we anticipated. Prior to 2020, the average amount of days off per individual was about 6 shifts. Today, it's about 9. So we've had much, much higher leave utilization. We've also had spikes in emergency responses. We've shared that throughout the last couple of years, especially with the fire benefit charge education materials that we sent out. We've had about a 54% increase in call volume, going from about less than 20,000 calls to more than 25,000 calls, and expected to continue to grow. So rising demand. And then, of course, we had the pandemic. We lost staff during that period. We had increased workload and fatigue. So we had to recover from that period. Dollars and cents. We also shared with the board that reserves were less than acceptable for an organization our size. We lacked policies governing fund balances and purposes. So before, really, other than what was required by the state auditor's office, which wasn't much at the time, our budget document, our annual budget document, was the only document that determined what our fund balances should be. We resolved that. We put a policy in front of the Board of Commissioners, and we established funds and policies dictating those funds. We also did not have a true insurance fund or a true rainy day fund. We had a contingency fund that was kind of looked at to be used for both of those purposes, but best practices for an organization our size is to actually have a contingency fund and an insurance fund separately. So we created that. Prior to 2020, we had limited capital replacements and allocations, and we deferred maintenance. As we've talked about over the last couple of years, we got into the habit of deferring maintenance and then going out to the public and asking for lump sum amounts in terms of the issuance of bonds. And that is not something that we wanted to continue to do. For building fire stations and very large capital items makes sense, but to replace things that are on regular replacement schedules doesn't make any sense. To pay for something for 20 or 30 years when it's going to be out the door in less than that. We also lacked annual contributions to our reserve funds, and we also determined that our lowest cash balance was in 2018. So many years after the recession, our lowest cash position was in 2018, when we should have actually been in a much better financial position. So some of the considerations and challenges during this last period. We needed to shorten the apparatus replacement schedule timeline. So previously, engines, ladder trucks, et cetera, were on a 20-year replacement cycle. That worked when we had far less calls to respond to. With rising demand, wear and tear on those apparatus is more and more. In the fleet division, I think it was about 2020 or 2021, did a presentation, one of these meetings, where they indicated we needed to shorten the replacement schedule. It was too much wear and tear on the engines. Also, apparatus needs went beyond what was covered in the 2015 bond. So the $39 million bond that was approved did not meet all of the needs of the districts. So what was left out of that bond was a boat, Marine 67, maritime vessel, fire engines, a heavy rescue, hazmat, and additional staff vehicles. We had the funding concerns. We had the cycle of uncertainty, which was the fact that every so many years we're going out to the public and asking for a renewed levy or maintenance operations levy or a lid lift to rise above the 1% limitation and guarantee at least 6% increases. We had the perfect storm situation actually happen when we had a lid lift cycle and an M&O cycle expiring at the same year. So 2024, had we not have done something in 2023 to renew a lid lift, we would have had 2 expiring levies at the same time, which would have been a multi-million-dollar shortfall for the organization. Other challenges, changes, and challenges. We've had 4 fire chiefs since 2019. We have 4 new board commissioners since 2020. So we've had changes at the top at both levels. We had expired labor contracts. We have poor labor management relations. And we've had grievances and unfair labor practices, something that we didn't have for nearly 2 decades. So with all of that, our financial situation, changes in leadership, labor relation problems, what have we actually accomplished the last 5 years? People. We've hired more people. We've grown. We've increased operational staffing. It's hard to see on the screen. I apologize for that. Maybe you can see the TVs. We've increased operational staffing by 18 positions. The 2025 budget has 148 assigned positions, or 37 per shift. So we've gone from 32.5 or below to 37 in the 2025 budget. We've increased support staff across most divisions to support the growing needs of the organization. Nearly every division in our organization has grown in the last 5 years. We've accomplished pre-pandemic chief officer levels. We're currently at 6 chief officers, which match pre-pandemic levels. And the 2025 budget, which will be presented here in a few minutes, has an FTE headcount of 207 staff members. So we're much, much bigger than we were previously. Did a little research. 75 employees have been hired since 2020. That's a lot of hiring on the part of the HR division, if you think about that. It's a lot of people. We've made tangible investments. We reduced the apparatus replacement schedule to the 15-year cycle. We're going to shoot for 12 years in the future, but right now we're on a 15-year cycle. We purchased 6 engines, a heavy rescue, a marine unit, a hazmat rig, and numerous staff vehicles without seeking voter-approved bond measures. We've done that all with our operating capital budgets the last several years. We just recently purchased a headquarter building, and we funded an average of $1 million a year in capital expenditures. So significant investments in the last 5 years. So we've also accomplished valuable decision making. The Board of Commissioners adopted the fund policy that I spoke of earlier. We've increased the general fund balance. We've increased the contingencies fund balance. We've doubled the capital fund balance. We established a rainy day insurance fund, and the board took action to surplus property that is unused to fund future projects, and that is currently in process. Those are significant decisions and significant improvements in our funding. Funding achievements. We passed an increased M&O in 2020 for $3.75 million a year, which was $1 million more than the last cycle. We renewed a lid lift early in 2023 to avoid that perfect storm of having 2 expiring levies in 2024. We built up our financial reserves to weather any shortfalls to avoid layoffs. And we passed fire benefit charge in 2024. Significant milestone of our strategic bridge plan. Sounds pretty low. Is it landing? Okay, what else have we accomplished? Noteworthy negotiations. So we ratified 2 collective bargaining agreements in this period. The firefighters CBA that was approved this year is the largest and most competitive compensation package in our 75-year history. Included a lot of additional pay incentives. We have more people than we've ever had. Biggest package in our history. And support staff also Support staff also renewed a successor contract, which provided benefits that were not in the previous version. What's next? We survived. I love this photo because for as much as this organization has been through the last several years, it's kind of like this cat. The cat was probably in a really bad place with fire and flames, and he was pulled out and saved. And if you couldn't tell that he's happy from the look on his face, but we should be happy with our accomplishments. Next, we need to focus on the human side of the organization. And I will talk about that slide in a little bit. That's the last 5 years in a snapshot. We've accomplished a lot together.
Thank you, Director Ganem. We're going to move on to item number 5. Public hearing of the reestablishment of the FBC per RCW 52.18.060 with action establishing the FBC. I will now call the public hearing to order. The purpose of the public hearing is to hear public testimony from citizens as to the 2025 fire benefit charge and for the board to review the benefit charge. Subsequent to the hearing, the board will take action to establish a fire benefit charge for collection in 2025. The hearing is being called pursuant to RCW 52.18.1060. This is a follow-up to the FBC presentation that was made at the October 29th regular meeting. After the public hearing has been completed, the chair will declare the public hearing closed. No additional testimony will be taken. So right now, at this time, public testimony is now open. Please, any comments, public comments in regards to the FBC presentation, only to the FBC presentation that took place in the regular meeting on October 29th, 2024. Yes.
My name is Mark. Thank you. My name is Mark Freitas. Most of you in the room know who I am. I did 18 years here in blood, sweat, and tears, and I really appreciate all that all of you have done. During the budget presentation, I would like someone to answer the question of response times. How are we different now than we were in previous years? It is a pleasure and an honor for me to stand before the board here. Would someone please address response times for the public? I understand that the organization is healthy. I understand we've got a good direction going. I understand that bridges have been built instead of cut off. The bridge I'm interested in is the public bridge where you reach out to us. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Any other public testimony? Okay. All righty. Hearing seen none, public testimony. We're going to need a motion to establish a fire benefit charge for collection in the 2025 in the amount not to exceed $19,000. 19 million, excuse me. You want to read that? And then hand it back to me when you're done.
Okay, I move to establish the fire benefit charge for collection in 2025 in the amount not to exceed $19 million.
Motion by Commissioner Venino, seconded by Commissioner Burrs. Any other discussion on the motion on the table? Hearing seen none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Motion carries. We are now going to adjourn the public hearing. At this time, no additional comments will be heard. We're back to the regular special meeting and the board commissioners resumes. We're going to resume that with subsequent action by the board establishing fire benefit charge for collection 2025. So we're moving to item number 6, which is the 2025 budget presentation and public hearing for revenue resources RCW 84.55.120. And I believe that's Director Ganem.
Thank you again, Commissioner. I'm going to hand out a couple of copies. Can you do this to the commissioners, please? Just the commissioners. Okay, we have hard copies for the commissioners to flip through, and everybody else can follow along on screen and online. Okay, as I indicated a little bit ago, we've grown. This is our 75th year anniversary, and this by far is the largest budget, most comprehensive budget we have ever developed. This happens to be, I think, my 5th presentation now. I actually did the budget presentation with Chief Pennington when he was incoming chief in 2019. Chief Church was still here, and I've done every budget presentation since then. Let's get started here. Okay. For those listening online, I'm actually going to read some of the achievements in the executive summary. I won't read the entire thing. Historic milestones were both celebrated and achieved in 2024. To begin, South King Fire welcomed 2 newly elected officials to the Board of Fire Commissioners in January. Greg Baruso was elected in place of longtime Commissioner Mark Thompson, and a retired firefighter, Craig Burris, was elected to Commissioner Dave Berger's seat after he chose to not seek re-election. We thank our former commissioners for their service, and we look forward to the future with new board members. 2024 also marked 75 years of service to the public. To commemorate this milestone, we invited our communities to join us at 2 open houses held in Federal Way and Des Moines. Firefighters, support staff, commissioners, and retirees engaged with our residents to reflect on our cherished past and service from then to now. From our early volunteer days in 1949 to an organization of more than 200 employees, we've grown with our community's continued support. We value this trust, and we commit to upholding the highest standards in support of the mission. Due to the pandemic and changes in key personnel and labor leadership and district management, there were delays in negotiating a successor firefighters collective bargaining agreement. After nearly 2 years of negotiations, including mediation through the Public Employers Relation Commission, both sides reached an agreement. In June, after the International Associations of Firefighters Local 2024 members voted to approve the new contract, the Board of Commissioners unanimously approved the new 4-year CBA for years 2022 through 2026, ensuring a wage and benefit package consistent with neighboring agencies for our firefighters. IAFF represented support staff also received an updated contract. Negotiations on a successor contract for the battalion chiefs are underway. In mid-2022, South King Fire ended the CARES program and paused a funding stream from King County EMS to reimagine how best to provide resources to the community. This year, mirroring similar programs that our neighboring agencies have implemented, the Mobile Integrated Health Program, MIH, was created. The MIH team consists of social workers and registered nurses who aim to address increases in low acuity calls and enhance community health and wellness by providing proactive patient-centered care. The 2-year strategic plan adopted in January of 2023 will be considered complete at the end of 24. The SBC consisted of 4 distinct pillars born from the 2022 Organizational Health Assessment. The 4 pillars of funding, leadership, accountability, and internal communications, which focused on specific deliverables leading to strategic actions identified in the OHA. Deliverables included access to information, increased and effective communications, employee evaluations, and processes to improve accountability and growth. Most notably, the funding pillar set out to identify and secure a more fair and sustainable funding model by placing more cost on structures with higher risk and resource needs. This was accomplished in August of 2024 when 65.28% of voters approved the fire benefit charge. Changing our funding model to the FBC and removing a cycle of uncertainty is a historic achievement for South King Fire. It's fitting that this was accomplished on our 75th year anniversary. Finally, for the history book, South King Fire purchased an office building in September to house the administrative support divisions. This decision was made with careful consideration. It will create efficiencies by co-locating office staff currently spread out throughout the district. Centralizing staff will provide better service as a one-stop shop to our employees and the citizens we serve. Further, moving administrative employees out of Station 62 will free up valuable space to add operational resources in the future, allowing for growth to meet the rising demands of the public. In our 75th year, we can no longer afford to have office space at response fire stations. Looking ahead, South King Fire must establish a new strategic plan that maps out a vision for organizational growth, sets the district priorities, and ensures that employees and constituents are working toward a common goal. Additionally, the district must engage in a standards of cover policy that effectively identifies fire district performance and levels of service by assessing risk, establishing response goals, and creating the strategy for resource deployment. Moving forward, these documents serve as a basis for all aspects of planning, decision-making, leadership, and finances. With our new sustainable funding mechanism, the district is positioned for success for years to come. All right. South King Fire continues to prioritize a balanced approach to budgeting. Additional resources are necessary to meet the rising demands. Continued support through the approval of critical and sustainable funding measures like the fire benefit charge enables us to maintain this growth and quality of service to the community. As I indicated earlier, we've increased operational staffing. So we've gone from 130 firefighters 2020 to 146 this year and 148 in the 2025 budget, which equates to 37 assigned per shift. 2024 budget included the adoption, implementation of the MIH program. This budget funds that. Additional staffing increases are meant to support the growing needs of the district. This budget, 2025 budget, includes a civilian public educator to assist with community outreach. Currently, we have a community affairs officer. The Community Affairs Division requested another position. The decision was made to not pull anybody off of the line because we need to maintain operational staffing. The second request was to bring on a civilian public educator. So this budget funds a civilian public educator. A logistics clerk position to help with the expanding needs of the logistics division. So we added a logistics clerk in the previous budget cycle. There was a request this year to increase the capacity within that division. We've also struggled the last several years with hydrant testing. So annually, we would fund temporary workers to come in and do our hydrant testing, which needs to be done as part of our WSRB rating. Instead of struggling to fill those temporary positions, they pitched, let's get rid of the temporary funding and hire another clerk to help with that workload. So this budget funds an additional clerk position. Also, with some of the exposure initiative reduction projects, the idea is that additional clerk could help. Custodian positions. This budget also funds new positions for this organization in the form of custodian positions. So when we purchased the headquarter building in September, we committed to janitorial services and other general maintenance of that facility. We also currently pay for janitorial services at some of our locations. And we also have a contract to do grounds maintenance. And so what this does is follow suit with a decision we made several years ago to eliminate the HVAC contract and hire an HVAC specialist to maintain our facilities. The facilities division pitched this year that we do the same thing with those other service contracts, is we eliminate those contracts and we bring people on to help. So this budget does include 2 new custodial positions. Also, we have an unfilled assistant chief position in the budget, and this last year we budgeted for a communication specialist to assist with the development of our annual reports and our newsletters and some of the things that we've struggled to maintain. So those positions are carried into the 2025 budget. Divisional and programmatic expenditures increases are driven mostly by rising costs. Compliance and need. Our insurance rates are going up. Our L&I rates are going up. Software as a service is going up. Pretty much these days, most things are services that are provided by software companies as opposed to purchasing it. We have annual maintenance included. So very costly to run an organization our size with software today. Utility costs are going up, and service fees are expected to have a large increase, and we'll talk about why that is in a little bit. Our annual investments in capital equipment and projects are also prioritized. Capital expenditures in this budget are expected to be a little bit more than $2 million. The budget also includes capital and contingency reserve contributions. I haven't quite figured out this. And in this budget, we do have debt service. So the last couple of years, knowing that we had those funding shortfall possibilities, we strategically used credit, so to speak, debt to purchase the heavy rescue and 2 fire engines. And then the building that we purchased recently was issued, debt was issued for that building. So we are now carrying debt service in our operating budget, which totals about $686,000. The plan will be to pay those off as soon as we can. We have to carry the building for 4 years. That's part of the agreement with the purchase of the building. Once the 4-year timeline ends, we can pay that loan off. Similar situations with the other apparatus. Alrighty, property tax and fire benefit charge. So everybody knows we've talked about it over and over and over again. With the passage of the fire benefit charge, we gave up 50 cents on the dollar. This year, 2025, we will collect $1 per thousand. It's a 50-cent reduction from 2024 levy rate. Property taxes on parcels are estimated at $29,365,983. So that is a reduction of 28.79% on property tax revenues. That equates to about $11,877,408. In August of 2024, voters approved the FBC for a period of 6 years. In 2025, the FBC is set at 37.125% of our operating budget. As we discussed during the FBC education, we anticipated that it would fall somewhere between 36 and 38%. 37.125. Or $18,998,013. Just under the $19 million that was presented at the special or at the regular meeting in October. Okay, 4-year maintenance and operations levy approved by voters in 2020 expires at the end of this year. Total projected revenues, including property tax, the FBC, and miscellaneous revenues and reimbursements are projected at $54,679,461. Nearly a $55 million organization. This also includes $750,000 in King County EMS monies that we've been sitting on. So when we paused the CARES program a couple of years ago, that money was untapped. So this budget includes utilization of that money before it expires in 2025. Okay, operating budget highlights. 2025 operating expenses are $51,173,100. This is a 10.4% increase, or $4,667,466 over the 2024 budget. Increases are driven mostly by personnel costs, negotiated changes within successor CBAs, new positions, and continued rising costs for goods and services. This budget includes 2 new entry-level firefighters. 2024 budget had 146 budgeted. This budget's 148. The purpose of the 2 positions is to round out each shift at 37 equally. Right now it's 36.5 per shift. This rounds out each shift. We have 3 firefighter hires to fill vacancies for upcoming retirements. We have the public educator position that we talked about earlier. We have an additional nurse, a registered nurse. So currently we have 2 social workers and 1 nurse, and they need to round out the team. This position is paid for with King County EMS money. So there was a request to hire an additional nurse. Logistics clerk position and the 2 custodial positions. Also increases with firefighter CBA. 4.2% cost of living adjustment, deferred compensation at 4.75% of first class firefighter. Officer and specialty rank pay increases, special team pay at 2.5% of first class firefighter, increased vacation time, and an annual hours working reduction for shift personnel. Represented support staff also receive the same in COLA and deferred compensation, and qualified non-represented personnel will also receive a 4.2% COLA and deferred compensation increases. Expected increases in L&I rates for 2025 are to be above 25%. And the commissioners get a raise. They didn't get a raise. They got a raise previously, but it hadn't made it into the last year's budget. So there's an increase for commissioner compensation as dictated by RTW. And there's also an increase in the amount of meetings that commissioners can attend. It went from 96 meetings a year to 144. More meetings, yay. All righty. Other funded projects and initiatives include the strategic plan, standards of cover, district policy and compliance services, leave management. We've utilized a service called Sedgwick to help us with our L&I leave management. We have our continued funding for our legislative advocate, Anthony Hempstead, who has been instrumental in getting us funding, helped us get money for the boat, helped us get money recently for our exposure reduction initiative, is currently assisting with a BRIC submission to provide some funds to help renovate Station 62, and on and on and on. So definitely getting our return on investment with Anthony and his team. Additional software for our support services. So last go around, there was a new product that logistics has been trying to spin up, and the other divisions are also wanting to participate in that. So this funds those divisions coming on board with that software. Some desperately needed network security and infrastructure upgrades. As you've seen in some of our commissioner reports, security is paramount. We don't want to be the next government agency on the news that has been subjected to a compromise. So we need to make sure that Isaac and his team has enough funding to harden our security. We have the exposure reduction initiative, and then we have funding for renovations at the new building that we just purchased. All righty. Snapshot of, I should probably zoom out here. Snapshot of our total district expenditures, highlighting last year's budget at $46.5 million and this year's budget with a 10% increase at $51.1 million. Capital budget, I know might be a little bit difficult to see here. Capital budget funds $2,257,162 in capital projects. Items highlighted in red are projects that will be reimbursed by King County money. So we're sitting on $250,000 of that $750,000 on money from King County EMS. So these projects will be funded with those monies. High pressure hoses, thermal imagers, Doppler medical devices, modems for our DFibs, response gear for the exposure reduction initiative, ballistic panels for our vests, and some additional operational equipment. We have $239,000 budgeted in information technology, and we have some station improvements. So one of the things that we've identified in our budget process is that some of the routine maintenance that we talked about being deferred previously, painting stations and remodeling bathrooms and things that just should be in the conduct of ordinary business have not happened. And so the facilities division made a powerful pitch and presentation during the budget process to start doing these things and getting us onto a cycle where we're pretty much painting a facility every year. And so if you do that, you know, we have 9 or 10 facilities now. Every year we'll be painting, and every year we'll be remodeling bathrooms, and it's just keeps us updated. So Station 64, there's funding to repaint the outside of Station 64. A little bit of money for a new sign at Station 66. Some bathroom upgrades at Station 67. We're told they're not conducive to, I believe, the amount of female workers at the station. So we've got to make some improvements there. We have Station 67 slated to get a new Niederman exhaust. This is part of the exposure reduction initiative, putting in a new exhaust system. We did at Station 64 this year. We can afford about 1 per year. So next year, Station 67 will be funded. There's some interior painting at Station 67, and then the burn tower outside this facility is in desperate need of some upgrades. And we're a member of the consortium, and part of our credit with the consortium is that we maintain our facility. There's about $46,000 in upgrades that are necessary on the burn tower. And then we've got $1 million slated for the renovations out of this year's money for the headquarters station. I'm sorry, for the headquarter facility. Also, last year we began budgeting contingency in our capital reserve fund. One of the problems that we encountered was around this time of the year, we were getting quotes. Well, we weren't starting the projects until later in the year, and then costs had gone up. And so we needed to have some contingency money budgeted, and we've been doing that. So we have $205,000 included in contingency. Okay, here's some other capital projects that are on the docket that are not funded through this budget process, but will be funded in different ways. We've got a ladder truck replacement, estimated to cost $2.4 million. There's a committee and a recommendation that has found its way to the chief's office. Once he works through that, he'll go before the board, get authorization to make a purchase. Timelines on apparatus are 2 to 4 years, depending on the manufacturer chosen. It's not something we would actually have to pay for right now, which is good, but it's an expenditure and a liability that we need to be paying attention to. We've got seismic and safety improvements at Fire Station 62, estimated currently to be between $8 and $12 million. Headquarter renovations with the newly purchased building, those are coming in at $3 million right now. So one of the things that we did when we financed the building was we knew that some renovations were going to be necessary. So we can't find my words. We took out a loan for $1 million more than the purchase price, and that gave us some financial cushion to do some renovations. We've met with the architects, and those renovations are coming in higher than expected. So we have $1 million out of loan money. $1 million in our capital allocation this year. And then we'll have to figure out how we're going to pay for the additional $1 million, which will likely either be out of our capital fund with commissioner authorization or out of the proceeds of the sale of the 320th property. Either way, it's a liability that we're going to have to be attentive to. The CO2 cleaning machine is part of the exposure reduction initiative. The machine itself costs about $780,000. Director Lee, Chief Winter, and Anthony Hempstead have been trying to secure federal money. There's a possibility that the federal government could fund up to $850,000 for that initiative, but with a change in administration and the election, we're not sure if that's going to make it through. If we don't purchase the machine, there's a lease option, which in our discussions, we actually think is probably a better way to go anyway. But that's $180,000 per year for 5 years to lease that piece of equipment. So that's something that is brewing out there, and we're waiting to see if some additional monies will help us with that project. Station 60 logistics facility infrastructure improvements. So if we purchase or lease that piece of equipment, we've got to do about $380,000 of renovations at Station 60 to actually be able to house that equipment and have the electrical capacity for it. So some more improvements. So the authorization by the Board of Commissioners to proceed and fund these projects beyond what is included in this budget must occur individually via board resolution. The source of these funds for each project may be withdrawn from a newly established construction fund, created from the proceeds of surplus property or from the district's capital fund. So the intention is once we sell the property is that we will create a fund, and that fund can only be utilized for capital projects. Assessed property values. Regular property taxes are based on projected assessed valuations. Currently $29,365,983,322. This represents an approximate increase of 5.53% over last year's actual levied amount. A note that we talked about last month at the regular meeting, when we did all of our analysis projections for the FBC, we were going off of King County data, which projected a 2%, less than a 2% increase in AVs. AVs are coming in at 5.53%. So they're higher than we had anticipated. Nonetheless, the 2025 fire levy rate will be comprised of the dollar per thousand and the FBC. We also have 9 cents still for the safety improvement bond. For comparative purposes, last year, we were $1.73 per thousand. So the M&O expired. We reduced the dollar by 50 cents. So we're dropping from $1.73 to $1.09 on property tax, and then plus the FBC. Projected revenues. Fire benefit charge replaces the M&O that used to be in this part of the budget. Minor increase in the Valley Regional contract. There's about a 1% inflator on that agreement with Valley Regional for covering the West Hill of Auburn. We have a CPI increase in our ambulance contract with TriMed. We have the $750,000 from King County EMS that we talked about earlier. Total revenue, $54,679,461. Snapshot of our balance, our revenue versus expense balance sheet. So $500,000 to the good. One thing that we've done for the last several years is look to have about a 1% buffer in our budget balance. Previously, we actually reduced in previous budgets prior to 2020, we took out 1% because you will always have delinquent taxes. And so the chief at the time took out 1% of the budget. Well, as our budget grew, in a finance and audit committee meeting, Commissioner Gates said, well, don't we end up getting the money eventually? And we do. So we took out that 1% delinquency, but we said if we do that, we need to at least then have a buffer at the other end. And so we look to have a balanced budget and a buffer of about 1%. So we're kind of in that range right now. Capital payments, 2.257 million. We have a reserve contribution of $500,000, and we have a contingency reserve contribution of $250,000. So it's important to note why we're continuing to contribute to the capital fund right now. If you go back to that capital project sheet and those high value projects, that money has to come from somewhere. We've put the 320th property on the market. We had an interested buyer. That deal fell through. It's currently back on the market. We have another interested buyer, but we keep kind of pushing it out. So we need to make sure that our capital fund is robust enough to be able to pull from it when we need to, if we're waiting on other things to happen. So, for example, if for some reason we needed to pay for that ladder truck now, that's got to come from somewhere. We would pull from the capital fund. So the capital fund needs to be able to absorb those hits. Okay, fund balances. The January 1st, 2025 balances are based upon current projections. These are estimates and will vary when actual year-end revenue and expenses become available. So with the policy the board adopted, the general fund, we look to have a 60-day average of expenses. Next year, our expenses are slated to be about $4.4 million a month. So that means we need about a minimum of $8.8 million fund balance. Our contingency cash fund is set at 8% of our operating expenditures. So contingency needs to be 4.1. As you can see right now, contingency is less than that. We're going to continue to make contributions to get it up to the point that it needs to be, but we can do it slowly. Capital fund, 10% of operating fund. We've met that threshold, but again, high dollar projects looming out there. We need to make sure we have enough money. Our insurance reserve fund, which was created this last year, that money will be transferred this year, and we will have $2.5 million in our rainy day fund. Medical reserve fund for our self-insurance program, 1.3 million, and our left one medical reserve fund at almost 2 million. So come January, our total fund balance will be around $33 million. Source of revenues. 54% property tax. That's a significant drop from previous years with the change in FBC. FBC will amount to 34.7% of our revenue. So there's a difference between what it can be with your operating budget and when you actually total all of your revenue, it equates to 34.7% of our revenue. Use of funds, 80.5% are dedicated to personnel. This is a change, again, from 5 years ago, where we weren't making capital contributions, we weren't budgeting capital projects. Currently, 80.5% estimated in personnel. And I'm not sure why it says 80. I'll fix that before budget adoption. All right, let's get into our operating budget. So I'm going to fly through these because we don't need to go line by line. I'll just touch on some of the highlights. So increases in commissioner compensation, as discussed earlier, a nominal amount of money in labor L&I rates for the commissioners. There was a decision this year to include commissioner compensation in L&I. And so it's very, very little amount of money, but Commissioner Gates rightfully called out in our meeting, hey, don't we pay into this? Shouldn't we be budgeting for it now? So $200 for anticipated L&I costs for the commissioners. There's also funds in here for legal counsel. We've got a lot going on, and some of our new commissioners had asked to have funds should the board need to have legal representation due to conflicts of interest and other reasons. So there's a new line item for legal for the board. Okay, status quo on elections, slight increase in our audit costs as conducted by the Washington State Auditor's Office. This is one of the budgets with the most changes, our general budget. So this last year, we funded a 75th year anniversary line item, sort of recognizing our employees and the open houses and some of the things that we did for the community. We're not going to budget for anything there, but it was an expenditure that we had this year, so we left it in the budget to show that it's a zero line now. We do expect our fuel costs to go down. There's been a reduction in fuel cost in general and gasoline. So, and some of the changes there, we should see some reductions in fuel utilization. We will maintain status quo on our attorney fees. Negotiations will see a significant drop. We've gotten through our labor contracts with the exception of the battalion chief. So we're going to keep a little bit of money should we need to use consultants for that contract. Increases in strategic planning with the expiration or with the retirement of the strategic bridge plan. We will be seeking a full strategic plan. We've got $75,000 budgeted next year to assist with that. Some retreat team building projects, increased frequency of our newsletters as part of our strategic bridge plan objectives. Service fees, we're going from $38,000 to $250,000 in service fees. Sharp increase because King County, we have to enter into an ILA with King County for them to process our fire benefit charge collection. And they base it off of a percentage of collection. So a significant amount of money going to King County so they can collect the FBC when they collect property tax. Increases in our insurance costs. I think we're all feeling those personally too. Increases in utilities and internet connection. So we're increasing capacity and increasing redundancy with our internet connection. These also include the fact that we're bringing on another facility. So we have a headquarter building to account for in some of these expenditures. Property debt service, property payment of $367,000 a year. That's two payments of $183, give or take, and the apparatus payments of heavy rescue and 2 engines, $686,000 in debt service. And with a growing budget, we're increasing the contingency budget. That's been static at $100,000 a year for many years. Now that our budget is so much bigger, we're boosting the contingency slightly. So a whopping increase of 46.8% in the general budget. Increases in the administrative budget account for chief officers. There was a movement in personnel due to promotions this last year, and those are now accounted for in the administrative budget. Other than that, status quo. Finance, a reduction of $147,000 or 18%, 18.5%. We had our business operations manager retire, and so that came out of this budget reduction in finance. Human resources is primarily status quo for the year. Cost of living adjustments for personnel, slight movement of funds in programmatic expenditures, 4.6% increase in the human resources budget. Operations, 7.8% increase or $1,968,428, driven mostly by labor contract. Status quo on battalion chiefs until there's a successor contract. EMS budget. I believe this is for CBT instruction. Last year, so there used to be an EMS budget. Over the years, it was zeroed out with the appointment of Deputy Chief Deffenbaugh. there's a desire to start to build out an EMS budget again. The first stab at that is to account for CBT instruction. That's included in overtime in this budget. Special teams, the rescue team, Marine team, hazmat team, and the swim unit. Modest increases to account for additional training and additional personnel as requested during the budget process. This formerly Health and Safety budget renamed to Health and Wellness. It also includes the Safety Committee. This is a roll-up of multiple initiatives, so to speak, and they all came out of very few line items. And so there was a desire this year to actually spread out these costs so that the division leads would know what they're spending and what funds they had to work with. So you'll see a change from last year's budget. There's overtime salaries for safety, wellness, peer support, and peer fitness individually, and training for the same initiative. So this budget is broken out. All in all, a $31,000 increase over last year's budget. This also includes a change in the wellness, the medical exams. Fire Marshal's office, little bit of an overlap here. We have a retiring member and a member that was appointed to replace him. And so there's some overlap in the budget. Community Affairs includes the additional PIO. So you'll see an increase in the salary line item and then some reductions elsewhere. With the fact that we're not running an election next year, the community affairs officer indicated we didn't need as much in advertising, some other things going on, and then a little bit of a boost in the Explorer program. This is the first year of the Explorer program, and there was a request to increase the funding for that. MIH includes an additional nurse. So last year, with the pause of the MIH division, there was some startup money that was allocated. Chief Deffenbaugh has used that money to acquire vehicles and other needs for the division. Those needs are settling down. This primarily funds the additional nurse. Training is a status quo, but we did see some reductions in the consortium costs, in part due to how they are accounting for and billing for training. And then apparently Kirkland joined the consortium. And so that reduced some costs for the contributing agencies. Facilities division. Fire alarm system testing repair, significant increase there. Can you remind me why?
A lot of our fire systems require a 5-year inspection or a 10. Sorry. All of our fire systems, the alarm and the sprinkler systems require either a 5-year or a 10-year test or inspection, and so we did a lot of those inspections this last year, and it revealed a significant amount of repairs that need to be done over the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then you'll see a big reduction in the janitorial services and grounds maintenance contracts with the hiring of FTEs. Fleet maintenance is a status quo this year. The maintenance division, the fleet division's done a great job, and they got a lot of investments the last couple of years in equipment and vehicles and everything else. And so Supervisor Brummett indicated this year that they felt like it was a status quo year for them, and they would let everybody else have some of the pie. Okay, logistics division. There's going to be some increases in logistics. So with the addition of personnel, Captain Thorson and Director Lee have worked to really figure out what our PPE costs are going to be, because it was under budgeted the last several years. And as a result, we were over budget in that line item. So they've settled on a number that they feel is more appropriate for an annual expenditure. And that's about $250,000 in PPE equipment. And then various increases here and there, depending on the needs. We've really, over the last couple of years, as we've built out the logistics division, we've pulled from all of the divisions and really brought them into logistics. And Captain Thorson and his team, Mitchell, Director Lee, it's really becoming the true place for all purchasing and distribution of goods. So we should see this budget continue to grow and build out in the years to come. So you can see a large increase of $215,000 in logistics. This also includes the DFIB maintenance contract. So when we purchased our DFIBs a couple of years ago, the 3-year payment plan included maintenance on it. That expired. And so I think it's about $30,000 a year that we're going to pay in DFIB maintenance. Okay, IT. Another big heavy hitter here. We have a pretty significant increase in logistics or in IT costs, and that's a result of settling with the headcount and the personnel. We've added our systems administrator this last year. We also have some redundancy, some doubling up in the data position. So a long-time member is retiring next year. We want a little bit of overlap so that that individual can cross-train with whoever's going to replace her. And so we're doubling up on salaries for a period. And then we've seen some significant increases in software as a service. A lot of divisions will ask for various programs, software suites. That ends up coming out of the IT budget. So pretty significant increase in IT costs. And finally, our employee health benefit plan. We've done really well. We're self-insured. And, some of you may recall during labor contract negotiations, the union had wanted to abandon this and go to the Northwest Firefighter Trust. One of our proposals actually included doing that and abandoning our self-insurance program. That proposal was not accepted, but nonetheless, we've stuck with our self-insurance plan, and it's done so well that we've been able to expand benefits for our employees and add medical coverage for various things that are not included on the open market. So we're pleased that our healthcare costs have been stable, and this year we're only seeing about a 1.5% increase in medical costs. This is a number that's different from what we receive from our brokers, because our budget includes more people than they include in their data and their numbers. So it doesn't match with what they show, but it's very close. We're status quo on dental, status quo on medical. So that's a big deal for us. Okay, that is your 2025 budget. Any questions about the budget? And then somebody needs to respond to Commissioner Freitas. Can somebody see that?
So the question is, Joe, from Joel Barrett, appreciate all the effort and the work on this budget. I don't see any provisions for additional property for future fire stations. In response to Mark Freitas, the most effective way to reduce increasing response times is adding stations strategically through the district. It feels like a observation to me, not a question, but good luck.
Okay, so no, the budget does not contain any provisions for new fire stations or property for fire stations. I believe that once the proceeds are realized from the sale of the property, that'll open the door to conversation about where future fire stations would be. One of the things that I think will be born from the strategic plan and the standards of coverage document will be where best to put a station and how will we fund it. So I think it's a little bit early to talk about that, but I think it's certainly on the radar for us, but it's predicated on adequate funding. One of the things that I may have forgotten to mention, and it is in the document, the purchase of the headquarter facility is to have the administrative and support staff that are currently located at Station 62 get out of that building so that we can increase space for firefighters. The most cost-effective method for us right now to add resources is at Station 62. And so this wasn't just office staff wanting a new building. It was to create room to house more units. So that is the most cost-effective thing to do at this point. Director Lee, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you tell me what's the going rate for to build a new fire station right now?
Should I say that again? Oh, I can hear myself now. My apologies. My best guesstimate, Director Ganem, is going to be between 18 to 25 million. It depends if we're going to retrofit a station or if we're going to build from scratch. Station 62 in particular has some concerns just because of the potential setbacks and the shoring that needs to be done for water. So it's a lot of money.
One of the things that we also determined, it didn't make it on the slide deck, but a couple of years ago when Chief Matafton was here, we were looking at what we were going to do at Station 62, limited funds, not wanting to go out to the taxpayer and ask for more money without a real plan. So we thought, hey, let's go across the street and talk to Lake Haven because they're about to do a massive renovation and maybe we're in their way. And so we contacted John Bowman, had him come over, said, hey, you guys are about to start construction. Would you like to buy us out, give us some capital so we can actually go and build a modern fire station to better meet the needs of the public? And he said, you're too late. We're too far in our plans. And I came over here a few years ago and asked Chief Church, and he said, absolutely not. So that never made it to the board, as far as I know. And so we've looked at multiple ways over the years to look for a new home, to build a new fire station. We're actively getting, the chief gets communication from individuals about potential properties opening up. It's all on the docket. But again, the most cost-effective thing for us to do right now is renovate Station 62 and add resources and figure out what our next plan is going to be based off of data within the strategic plan and the standards of cover. Any other questions? Now I'm going to ask, can anybody answer former Commissioner Freitas's question on response data?
So we'll exchange some information after the meeting so I can get you a more in-depth answer because our data person is currently out of the office. But according to some information that she sent me that we can't break out entirely by year yet, we are 7 minutes and 6 seconds is our average response time in 2024. 7 minutes and 54 seconds is our average response time in 2023. So we've actually gotten a little bit quicker this year than last year. So call volumes have gone up. We have added a few resources, which always helps with response times. So, but for farther back than 2023, we're going to have to do some more digging.
Any other questions?
That's it.
That concludes our 2025 draft budget presentation.
Thank you, Director Gann. For the purposes of being on public record, I need to read this a little backwards, but our public hearing is called the order. Purpose of public hearings is to hear public testimony from citizens with respect to 2025 sources of revenue, proposed allowable levy of taxes with South King Fire. This hearing is being called pursuant to RCW 84.55.120. So again, for public record, public hearing, ground rules. The following rules be enforced at the public hearing. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. No individual speaker shall speak more than once until all prospective speakers have been heard. Speakers shall not directly question or argue with each other. All questions and comments shall be directed to the chair. Questions asked must be pertinent to the subject of this hearing. After the public hearing has been completed, the chair will declare the public hearing closed and no additional testimony will be taken. So you saw the presentation, 2025 budget revenue sources. Revenue information summary summarizes projected revenue and source funds. These are estimates. There will be some variance when actual revenue is received. Property taxes remain the primary revenue source of fire department funding and are based on the levy limit worksheet received from the King County Assessor's Office. So information on 2024 levy basis calculation is based on allowable levy of $1 per 1,000 assessed valuation. The assessed valuation for calculating collections in 2025 is approximately $29,287,602. Based on preliminary levy limit worksheet dated 10/31/24. Based on assessed value and using the limit factor for district maximum statutory level is $29,287,602. This represents a dollar increase of $11,955,789 and a percentage increase of 988.38%. Included total dollar value increase of relevy of $249,609 for prior year refunds. So any public discussion or any other comments, please, only in regards to the budget presentation. Are there any other ones? Hearing and seeing none, we're going to public hearing is now closed. No additional comments will be heard. We're going to resume the special meeting board commissioners. We're going to move on to item 7. Again, public comments must be related to the special meeting. All right, hearing and seeing none. Board will adjourn the executive session to discuss attorney-client privilege matters per 42.30.1101I. To discuss with legal counsel representing agency matters relating to agency enforcement actions, or to discuss with legal counsel representing agency litigation or potential litigation to which agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or likely to become a party. When public knowledge regarding discussion is likely to result in adverse legal or financial consequences to the agency. Action may or may not be taken after executive session. Joining the board in executive session will be Executive Secretary Perry and legal counsel. At this time, we're going to recess for 5 minutes to get everyone transferred to executive session. We anticipate the executive session lasting for about 60 minutes. Action may or may not be taken after executive session. At the end of executive session, we're going to take 5-minute recess to get everyone transferred back over to a special meeting.